Hi everyone, and welcome to another Inspiral Wellbeing Toolkit video. These are a completely free resource for all our lovely Inspiral members to stream or to download. And I think Krysia and I just really wanted to do something to sort of fly the flag for Inspiral whilst all of the COVID restrictions are in place. And hopefully these videos will give you guys some inspiration and in these sort of quite difficult times that we're going through at the moment. So what we're trying to do is get some interviews together with the people that either would have been coming to Inspiral or, in some cases, friends of Inspiral.
Mm-hmm. So today we have got a beautiful soul with us and one of our dearest Inspiral friends. And Anna-Louise Haigh is an author, teacher, an inspirational speaker whose career literally has spanned over 30 years. Anna-Louise is known as the Soul Whisperer. Her books, The Soul Whisperer and Light-Filled, Loving and Wise, have literally inspired and touched many people's hearts, including mine. Now, during the lockdown, Anna-Louise has shown up and helped people to shine with her grace and her wisdom and her guidance on a daily basis for free, though donations are always welcome. And you can join her Facebook group, Living in Your Wow. And I can assure you that whether it's you can come on for 5 or 10 minutes, you will feel afterwards, you'll feel calmer and inspired. And certainly, you know, whenever I've joined, I try and get on there as often as I can because I know that I will come away with an affirmation and something that will make me feel good to tackle the rest of the day. And I just love seeing her on a daily basis too. So please say hello and welcome to Anna-Louise Haigh. Hello. How are you doing?
Hello.
Up in Harrogate?
Yes, I'm brilliant, thank you. Absolutely brilliant. And thank you so much for having me here. And I love the work you guys do. And it really is, you know, it's hearts united, isn't it? It's moving people forward, but collectively we all go together.
Yeah,
that's what I love.
Absolutely, that's a great description. Wish I'd have written that in my intro. But,
you can take it if you like.
Well, talking of quoting things, one of the first things we wanted to ask you about was a quote actually, which is A, not yours, and B, not in your book, but you have been associated with it, and it's something that resonated with me. It's from C.S. Lewis, and it says, "I don't have a soul. I am a soul, and I have a body." So it makes that sort of that link between a soul and a body and the separation there. And I think you posted it at some point, perhaps on social media recently, and I thought, wow, that is exactly how I feel. And I just thought you're probably the best person to ask, what is a soul? I mean, how do you define a soul? And you know, what does it mean to you, and how do you understand that concept?
Brilliant. Well, I love that question. I get asked it an awful lot. So to me, in my understanding, a soul is an infinite source of energy that is non-gender, it's ageless, but it's imprintable. So when I started writing my first book, The Soul Whisperer, that came about as a universal shove that I had to write this book. And the words started plowing through and becoming incredibly insistent to be put on paper. And it's a bit like I was holding on for the ride to begin with. And there were many questions. I put myself in the reader's position. There were many questions I thought a reader would want answers to. And one of the ones was, what is a soul? Where does it come from? What's it all about? And what's the difference between a soul and a spirit? Because that's a big question. And maybe we can look at that.
Mm.
But like I've said, to me, a soul is an infinite source of energy. It is non-form. So it literally, it's as big as light. It's as big as the sky.
Mm.
And a soul has an intelligence. It has an imprintable database, if you like.
Mm.
And its whole purpose is to know and understand unconditional love through the filter of being human. And so souls come from an ultimate universal or galactic source, you might want to consider it that huge. And so if you imagine that the soul is coming to Earth as a learner, so it has this experience in the Earth school, the soul school called Planet Earth. And in that, it has to go through many, many, many situations, many incarnations in order to get the full understanding of unconditional love and what that means. And the reason why it's doing this is so that it can return to its source to illuminate further the source.
Right.
Now, I liken it to a bumblebee. And I see that the soul is like a bumblebee.
Mm-hmm.
And each human hosting is a flower, a beautiful flower that it wants to spend time with.
Mm-hmm.
So the soul or the bumblebee hops to one flower, spends some time with it, gets what it needs, perhaps drops off something it's gained from another flower, but then it hops on again and again and again. So as a bumblebee, it is delivering and it's gaining, and that's exactly what the soul does. In each hosting, it delivers wisdom when the host is willing to listen. That's another topic.
Yeah.
But the soul delivers its wisdom through its various messenger systems. And from there, it picks up more information and wisdom and goes on to its next life. And in between, it rests just like a bumblebee would do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to me, that is the perfect analogy.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely love it. Yeah, I can just so a nice image of a bee harvesting, a soul bee.
Yes.
Soul bee.
Soul bee.
Soul bee.
Harvesting pollen.
Heard it here first.
Yes.
And learning those lessons, and
yeah,
some are traumatic, and you kind of when you see it as a soul school, as you've put it, it just helps you to get through some of those difficult times. You just think, okay, what am I learning here? What do I need to take?
Definitely.
Yeah. So Anna-Louise, now I know that your career has been extensive. In fact, I met you many, many, many years ago. It was the late 90s in Olympia.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I even have the certificate from that time.
Oh my God.
But can you, I know all about you, but can you tell us how you started on your holistic path? And were you always aware that your soul had this purpose, this yearning to where you are now?
Oh, big question. Okay, so to answer the last question first, yes, I always was aware that there was something that I didn't have the words for, right from being a child. From being a very young child, I remember talking to myself, and when I would do certain things, when I would dance around the house, I would say to myself, well, this is when I was a ballerina before. And I maybe was 4. What did I know then about what I'm doing now? And I was equally as a child, early years, I had an insatiable interest for anything from the Orient, particularly Japan and China, mainly China. And it just felt like I knew it. We had an aunt who was the head stewardess for BOAC at the time. And this is back in the early 60s. She would bring me a little fan, a paper fan, or an Oriental doll or something. And it was like I'd found them again. Whenever she gave me something new, it was like, oh, there it is. And it just felt right. It felt 1,000,000% right. And yet at the time I was living in Canada, and I suppose that was a bit of a jarring that went on in my journey. But for me, I've always felt like a misfit, and a happy misfit, not a lonely, sad misfit or anything like that.
Okay.
But I've always felt as though I didn't need to try to fit in, and that it was okay not to. But then you go through the teenage stuff of all the granch that goes with that and all that stuff. And you kind of lose yourself into humanness at that point. But for me, I've always been aware that nature is our greatest healer, that we can align with animals on a heart-centered level. We meet there, not that this is a deer and I'm a human. We meet at the heart center space.
Yeah.
At nighttime, when I was a kid, after my parents got divorced, it was a challenging time, like really challenging. And my mom moved us to an island in rural Ontario, and it was a fair-sized island. It wasn't our island. There was an Indian reservation at the top end. I think they had about a 4-mile reserve back in the days when you had Indian reservations. And I always wanted to go there, but we weren't allowed. But I felt really drawn to being there. And I was very dark-skinned. In the summertime, I would tan absolutely golden very quickly. So, of course, at school, I got teased for being a Native American. And I thought, at the time, it didn't help that the first day of school, my mother gave me one of those haircuts, like
I
this.
had one of those too. Yeah.
With the bowl.
Yeah, no, sellotape it was.
Coming back.
Oh yeah, home hairdressing, always good. Yeah, that's why I've left mine. But I experienced what it felt like to be an outcast, and my underlying misfit feelings kind of matched with that. And I felt, I suppose you'd use the words today, prejudice and racism. They weren't words that were around in my town at that time. It was just like, oh, yeah, look at that.
Right.
And so I experienced what it was like to be singled out, to be isolated in that way. And while it was painful, it actually was like, well, that's okay, because I'm a misfit anyway. It doesn't really matter. And so I had great empathy with people of different culture and different beliefs and backgrounds. And it's always stayed with me. And really from I suppose a soul connection. Yeah, it is a soul connection. It's an origin connection, really. I would go out for walks at night. Where we lived was so rural. There was no cars, there was no streetlights, there was no telephones, there was no nothing. But I would go out for walks at night, and because there was no light pollution, the stars it was like hundreds and thousands. And yet there was always a particular one, part of the Orion constellation, which I felt drawn to. I've been recently doing some research on that, actually. But I would talk to the stars. I would talk to that star, and I would throw all my problems up to it. And I would sit in the dark, listening to the owls or whatever else was around, and just be still. And the power of stillness to get centered and to be able to listen and hear and feel at home. Feel at home, connecting in that way, looking up to the heavens, up to the stars, and just thinking, when are you coming back? Because have you forgotten me already? And that's really how I went on. And I've had regular jobs, left a good career to go into complementary medicine, which everybody thought I was equally weird back when I was 27. And by that point, I'd moved back to England. And it was like, yep, weird works for me. Off I go.
Yeah.
And I haven't looked back. So yeah, that was over 30 years ago.
Yeah, the star thing. I mean, when I met you, you didn't know what the Seven Sisters were, the Pleiades. And you just were like, yeah, okay. And I was like, that's where I'm from. From literally, I would talk to them from as far back as I can remember. So do you know which star you were drawn to?
It's, God, I can't remember the name of it now, because I was looking at it the other day and baking my head off in the sun. It's in the Orion's belt. It's the middle one in the Orion's belt.
Probably the wisest.
There you go. Just Google it.
The most wise star. Star of wisdom.
But it is the star of wisdom. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Say that. I'm too humble to say that.
No, don't be.
But I have to say, I also do feel my soul's had its journeys through the Pleiades star system, and also through various other star systems. So this to me is a really important factor, because when I'm working with people who equally feel like misfits and have had struggles, depression, anxiety, broken relationships, this is their human pattern, to gently be able to introduce to them that, you know, well, maybe part of this is because you're a star seed and you've got this whole other element to your soul about you that needs to be understood and honored. And when you get that point, you can actually, you don't have to fit into anybody else's system. You can simply honor that and start to elevate your soul and learn what it needs to learn in that vibration.
Yeah.
And it answers so many things. And I'm really annoyed with myself. I can't remember the name of the star, but because I found that and it's like, oh God, and I Googled so many other things.
It will come. It will come.
But it's not Beetlejuice, and but it is the middle one. But yeah, the middle one of the belt. So that's it. Okay. I used to call it Smiley. I don't know why. I call it Smiley. I think the belt to me looked a bit like a smile. Could be a smile. So, yeah. There you go. All my secrets.
And I think, you know, star seeds, we could go on a whole new video about star seeds. So we'll have you back for that one.
Yep.
Now,
I love it.
I've had your book, Light Filled, Loving and Wise, for eons now. And in fact, I've got you a copy.
Everyone in the house has a copy.
Because in fact, this is your copy.
Oh, there you go.
It's Matt's copy there, Anna-Louise.
Stolen.
Very nice thing about you. And the reason why I love it, one, it's simple, it's small, and I love just opening. It's just what I tend to do with books. I kind of go, oh, I haven't read that book in ages. I open it at a page, and more often than not, it's like, oh, I so needed to read that. And funny enough, I've literally opened the page.
I was just about to say that.
Okay. On something that I was going to ask you, because when I read this book years ago, the one thing that stuck in my head that just always made me smile was, are you the pebble or the plop? I can't believe, look at that. I literally opened it on that page. I swear that, as you saw me holding it, are you the pebble or the plop? And I used to, you know, we were not, you know, having a tiff or anything. I used to think, oh, am I being a pebble or a plop here? We don't argue much. And can you just explain to people what made you write about the pebble or the plop? Because it's a lovely
The pebble or the plop. Yeah. The pebble or the plop came about because I was being quite observant. I know I'm called Anna-Louise, but I should be called analytical, because that is me. I'm like a spiritual sleuth. I was pondering over people's different approaches to common situations, and how some people see things as oh wow, yeah, great, and other people are, that'll never work. And I just thought, wow. And because I love being out in nature, and I'm always beachcombing and pebble picking and skimming stones off the water and all that stuff, I thought, well, that parallels, because if you're being a pebble, you are this energy bundle, and you're like a radiant pebble that when you drop into the still waters of life, you cast many beautiful ripples, and you don't know where those ripples are going to go. So just like when you see somebody being really exuberant, even if it's somebody you don't know, that touches you and ripples out. And that's being a pebble. And you don't have to be attached to where the ripples go. You don't have to have any need to know where they go. And so to me, that's being a pebble. Well, to be a plop, it's more like you're the one rock that people think is going to be lovely, and they hurl it into the waters of life, and it just goes boom. And it's like, oh, and it's gone out of sight. There's no ripples. There's just a yucky thud sound. And to me, I've experienced that thud sound in my heart. I know it sounds a bit weird, but you'll understand.
Yeah.
And it's when somebody throws you a side glance or bursts your bubble. If you're being a pebble and they burst your bubble, you know, I'm using lots of metaphors there, but
No,
you
no.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
People who are ploppers are basically the bubble bursters and naysayers in life. If you've won 1 million, why wasn't it 2? You know,
Right.
they're ploppers to me,
Yeah.
and
Party
I'd rather be a
ploppers.
pebble.
Party ploppers.
Party ploppers. Yeah, yeah, they are. So that's, to me, it's a way not of judging people, but
Yeah.
observing people
Yes.
and using that observation to say, okay, if I've noticed this, when am I like that? Either pebbly or ploppy. When am I like that? And catching myself if I'm not in the groove, I really would rather be in my natural groove.
Yeah. And it's funny because after reading that, if I was kind of in a situation, it used to help me, because sometimes they say, oh, you know, if you're feeling a bit kind of like, just imagine that person naked or something, and that will just kind of make you smile. Whereas I used to think, well,
Really?
it just,
Okay, that's works. Okay,
it
interesting.
works. You just kind of,
Yeah.
you can hear it in your head, and it's great because you can just go, well,
Yep.
just like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, it's just
So,
like you say.
honor the pebbles in your life.
Yes.
Shall we talk a little bit about the sort of things that you're doing at the moment, and some of the sort of exciting plans that you've got coming up? Because I know from talking to you and seeing some of the things on your site that you're working on some new projects, which sound exciting. And perhaps, I think I'm right in saying, a sort of move away from one-to-one sessions and perhaps more group sessions, which is probably particularly topical given where we are with all of this.
Yeah,
stuff going on.
exactly.
Could you tell us a little bit more about that and what sort of thing you'll be teaching?
Thank you. Yeah. For several years now, since the Soul Whisperer and Lightfield came out, I have mentored a lot of people through the philosophy of becoming your own soul whisperer. So you know your soul and you can be guided by it and enriched by it and on your path. Perfect. And that's given me a vast array of exposure and experience to how people are or are not navigating their life, where they stumble, and how I can help them with various tools to up-level themselves and move forward. And the time had come last year when I thought, right, I'm getting so many inquiries, I can't actually service them all. So it's time to go bigger and go out further.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided I was going to put together a new program called The Way of Your Soul. And I wanted it to be a 9-month program. So a new birthing.
Right.
And I put that together and created it into a program that was due to launch on the 24th of March this year, 2020. But because of changes I knew that were coming and how my personal circumstances were going to be affected, I had to launch it a day earlier. So it was launched on lockdown day. I kept laughing to myself, thinking, for goodness sake, I've waited probably 8 years to do this. The whole point is getting people to know and understand themselves so they can grow, they can be empowered, they can reach that level of joy and fulfillment and meaning. And we're going into lockdown where literally people are going to have to cocoon. They're going to go in like a caterpillar from their regular lives, mush about for a bit and dissolve their old selves. And when the time is right, they're going to reemerge. And it's the perfect opportunity to reemerge as that beautiful butterfly that's been sleeping and waiting inside the caterpillar all those previous years. The irony has not left me, and I just love it. So The Way of Your Soul is my legacy offering from 30 years of professional work, but a lifetime and many lifetimes of preparedness to deliver this. So to help people get to know whether it's right for them, I have a 7-day quest, which is called Introduction to Soul Whispering. And my next one starts on the 30th of May. But I run the intake quarterly to go with the solstices and the equinoxes. So my website will always show when the next intake is there. But I only take 9 people at any one intake because I work personally with them.
Yeah, and you feel that any larger groups might sort of, it's difficult to work with them.
Yeah, it would be difficult to work with. There has been a request for a self-study option where people can join without my assistance and they can work through it in a slightly different way, and that would be more available more broadly, shall we say, but from my personal engagement with it, it's definitely a group of 9.
Right. Interesting.
Okay. So, Anna-Louise, especially during lockdown, can you share any tools that people can take on board and start practicing, but also the fact that we're coming out of lockdown at some point, although I have to say I'm really enjoying kind of being in, and just taking that time for me, and for you too.
Oh,
But
yeah, thanks.
got to include him. But I'm actually probably the opposite. You know, so many of my friends are saying, "Can't wait for this to be over," and I can feel in my heart, I'm thinking, "But I love the blue sky. I love the fact that there are very few cars on the road." I went out the other day, I hadn't been out for 2 weeks, went out the other day, all of a sudden there's so many more cars, and it was like, I could feel myself going. So coming out again, have you got any wonderful tools that you could share with us?
Thank you. My top few tips would be that whenever people are watching this, whether it's right now or whenever, is to take time to sit down with yourself with an empty notebook or a journal and sit down and just write about what makes your heart sing. And in doing that, you know, it can be as fanciful as you like, ice creams on the beach or sitting on a swing in a park or whatever. And then take that as a snapshot and say, okay, how does my life support me in that now? Coming into lockdown, the people I was working with and on my daily lives, I encouraged people to look at what their life was like going into lockdown. And maybe that's an exercise people can do, you know, post retrospectively. What was your life like before lockdown? So what were your stresses? What were your fears? What were your joys? What were you aiming for? What was working? What wasn't working? Put all that stuff down. You know, were you fulfilled? Where did you feel your days were meaningful? Were you making a difference in the way that your heart wants you to? And through the cocooning process of the lockdown, so many people, like you say, are clamoring to get back to their life. And I think 2 things are going to happen with that. First of all, if they try to go straight back into the life they had or recreate that life they had, they're going to find it isn't meeting them where they need it to, because so much out in the world that they depend upon will have changed. Your company you work for may have changed. The things you want to buy may have changed. You may find you don't want to buy stuff, you just buy what you need. Something will have changed. And to try and go backwards in time and recreate that has never been a healthy pursuit. The other thing I think is going to happen is, unless we take that reflective look and look at it from our heart center, people are going to find themselves in a very strange area of stress and anxiety because they're trying to catch something which has gone.
Yes.
And you might try to physically reproduce your work or make all your payments on your cards or whatever it is, the material stuff. You may try and recapture that. And for a time you might do, you know, with the government assistance and one thing and another. But it will filter into thin air, because for those who haven't paid attention, it will filter into thin air because there will be nothing to hang on to, because no change will have happened. And at the beginning of this year, I did my vision board exercises, workshops with people. And I gave this year the theme of the year of awakening. So 2020, clear vision. Yeah. And it's about having that clarity. Now, none of us put on our vision board, ooh, let's have a global pandemic for 3 or 4 months. Nobody put that on their vision board.
Usually.
Yeah, exactly. But a lot of people will have put things like time at home, time with family, time just to be in nature, freedom, empowerment, inspiration, creativity, time just to be. All these dreamy things we cut out of magazines that are elusive.
So true.
Probably got stuck on a vision board. And you've manifested it. You haven't manifested the coronavirus.
Yeah.
You've manifested the opportunity.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so now, for everybody who's done a vision board or looked at this year going, I'm going to get this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to make this change. Now's the time you're being called to your authenticity to step up, show up, and shine with that. Because you put it out there. And for years, we've been putting this stuff out there, calling in what we want, and somehow managing to bat it away like a kitten with a ball. Like, no, that's not big enough. It's not good enough. It's not the right time. Well, you know what? This is the time.
This is it.
And it is a time of awakening.
Absolutely.
And that's what my top tip is. Start to realize it's an awakening.
Absolutely. I mean, it's been 10 weeks and we're still speaking, aren't we?
Yeah. It's 10 long weeks. No.
But yeah, you're exactly right, Matt.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. I think I was going to say the people who try to clamor back to what they had are going to find it's like clamoring at sand.
Yes.
And people need to realize that that's just not a way forward.
No.
And if people are feeling that there's that sense of, okay, I may not be able to go back, but I don't know what to do going forward, you know, watching this video or attending any of these Inspiral online things and getting to the meetings and tapping into such as what I offer on Facebook and through other things. There's so many people, you don't have to look very far around you to find somebody who's perhaps gone through a few of the early quivers about, well, okay, what am I awakening to? What's it all about? There's so much information out there now, and you're not alone. I mean, that saying that started off when we were in the beginning of lockdown, we're all in this together. You are not alone. Man, oh man, that is perfect for the awakening that's happening now. And we'll all take each other up. That's the beauty of it.
Yes. Yeah. Fantastic.
That's interesting stuff. Yeah.
Now, Anna-Louise, I love Oracle decks. And I know that you don't have one at the moment, but I know it's coming. Okay.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
That's what it could look like.
That's what it could look like. Now, yeah, my lovely roomie behind. But this is your new deck. Okay. So I'm just going to shuffle. Okay, the cards in your deck.
Yeah.
All right. Just going to pull one out. So can you describe to me the illustration on the card and the affirmation? Because it's feeling amazing.
Okay. Well, the image I get is of a lone figure standing on the edge of what will have been a big climb up to a precipice. And they're standing, kind of an image that perhaps people have seen before, but with their arms wide open. And it's as though they're embracing everything in front of them, but also being consumed by everything in front of them. And the imagery I get is that literally in making that gesture of opening, they actually take flight. And they experience the freedom of soaring, of catching the thermals, of being expansive and limitless, which is the very feeling of the soul. So the affirmation, I think I'd have to use the most powerful one of all. I am.
2 strong words there. Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The source.
Yeah.
I am.
Well,
You can add other things to that, you know. But
absolutely, and it sounds as if you've already got one card there designed for your new deck.
Well, possibly so. Possibly so.
I can't wait for them. Seriously. I know that they're coming. So thank you so much, Anna-Louise. Now we're going to just finish with, we ask our guests a few questions at the end. And they're just some nice fun questions, but give you a little insight into you and your character. And so the first one is your favourite colour.
Oh, it's easy. This colour, because it reminds me of lotuses, and lotus is my flower.
So what would you call that colour?
Kind of like a cerise or maybe a bit of a magenta, fuchsia.
Yes.
Yeah, fuchsia probably.
Beautiful.
Fuchsia.
Okay, and lucky number?
Number 8. As above, so below, inner harmony,
course.
meeting at the heart center.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yep.
A favorite crystal?
Oh.
Favorite crystal? Oh, well, it's going to sound terribly predictable, but amethyst, but raw cut amethyst. And the reason why that one's come to mind is because I've had a crystal about that big, which I think I nicked off my brother when I was about 5. I don't know where he got it from. And I've had it all my life, and I've had it made into a necklace. And it's just a beautiful raw cut amethyst, beautiful deep purple.
And does he know that you pinched it from him?
Does now.
Yeah, I was going to say, because he does now.
The best crystals are so often stolen, as no one says. So
I will have traded him something for it. No, a sandwich or something.
And I think you've actually answered this. But a flower that you're particularly drawn to?
The lotus.
Lotus.
Lotus, yeah, for all its symbology, and probably so many past life connotations with that as well. And when I was in China, I would just spend time in the parks in the early mornings watching the residents do their Tai Chi, and I would be sitting at the lotus ponds, and it was just as though I was in there with them. So I love the story of the lotus as well, kind of starting out in really muddy roots that nobody'd ever want to go near, and then pushing towards the light and finally blossoming. And what people see is the blossom, they don't see the journey. Yes. Well, that's kind of all of us.
Yes, it is.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Your spirit animal. Spirit guide.
Animal, owl.
Okay.
An owl. And in particular, a tawny owl. Yeah, tawny owl. Something I came across in a school project. And it's one of those breadcrumbs that I've always loved tawny owls. And now in this connotation of my lifetime, it's so meaningful to me. So that's another breadcrumb, like the China connection and the stars. They're all breadcrumbs leading to one great big loaf.
What a
loaf.
The last one, do you have a favorite tree?
Favorite tree? Yeah, I would say a silver birch.
Oh, I like a silver
birch.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted in the front garden, didn't I? Except it was just a little postage stamp garden, but I thought just 2 trees. Yeah. Silver birch and a
really powerful trees. Silver birches, beautiful in every season.
Wow. Well, Anna-Louise, thank you so much for joining us. It's been wonderful as ever, and I will be joining you tomorrow at midday. We'll post the group up and how to contact you and the link.
We'll put it all here.
We'll put it all here for people.
Okay.
And do look up Anna-Louise Haigh, and if you can join her FB group, I can highly recommend it. And pop this in your handbag or your man bag.
Yes, absolutely. I don't have one, but
I will just say, you guys, like Phil, Loving and Wise, I'm still sending them out personally and signing every copy.
Is that right?
So you might find some on Amazon, but they'll probably be secondhand that people have passed on into the ether. But I still send out every single one hand signed for whoever buys them. So you can buy them through Amazon, but they come from me.
Oh, okay.
There you go.
Well, added incentive. Yeah.
There you go. Get that.
Buy through, and they send me a message.
It'd be a beautiful message inside for you because, well, we haven't really talked about it. Anna-Louise is extremely intuitive, intuitive healer. I know I went on about author, teacher, and inspirational speaker, but you are an intuitive healer. So yeah, get the book. Okay, thank you so much, Anna-Louise.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Wonderful as always.
Okay, thank you both.